very unwieldy.
It's difficult to always remember that diamonds are stones, so they're very heavy.
Yes. Fortunately, my father and I have about the same sort of shaped head. But once you put it on, it stays. I mean, it just remains itself.
They're hiding jewels worth billions in a secret vault, and you're not supposed to know about this. We're talking about tiaras dripping in diamonds bigger than your thumb, necklaces that survived literal revolutions, and one piece containing actual relics from Christ's crucifixion. Some haven't seen daylight in over 100 years. The craziest part? They could wear them tomorrow, but they won't. Why? What don't they want us to see?
And you can't look down to read the speech. You have to take the speech up. Because if you did, your neck would break, or it'd fall off. So there are some disadvantages to crowns, but otherwise, they're quite important things.
I'm about to expose the royal jewels they've been desperately hiding from the world. And trust me, you won't believe what I found. The British royal family possesses one of the most extraordinary jewelry collections in the world. Yet many of its most magnificent pieces remain hidden from public view. These aren't lost treasures or forgotten relics. They exist, carefully preserved in the royal vault. But for various reasons, they simply haven't been worn in decades, sometimes even in over a century. It's fascinating to think about these spectacular jewels sitting in darkness, waiting for the right moment or the right person to bring them back into the light. One of the earliest examples of a jewel that vanished from sight is the pearl sautoir necklace given to Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon when she married the future King George VI in 1923. The citizens of the City of London presented her with this elegant piece, which consisted of 5 rows of pearls held together by a diamond clasp. In the fashion of the 1920s, it was meant to be worn long and flowing, creating that characteristic flapper-era silhouette. Early photographs show the young Duchess of York wearing it beautifully, particularly in a series of portraits taken at the Vandyk Studios. She looked every bit the modern royal bride of her time. Then something curious happened. The necklace simply stopped appearing. For nearly 100 years now, it has remained out of sight. The most logical explanation is that fashion changed. Long sautoir necklaces fell out of style, and the extremely long format became difficult to incorporate into modern royal wardrobes. These pieces can be tricky to wear with contemporary clothing, and they don't always photograph well at formal events. However, fashion alone doesn't always seal a jewel's fate. There's another sautoir in the collection that proves this point perfectly. Queen Alexandra gave the Queen Mother an amethyst sautoir as a wedding gift, featuring beautiful purple stones and a large heart-shaped amethyst pendant. Like the pearl version, it disappeared from public view for nearly a century. But in 2012, it made a surprising return when Queen Camilla wore it. The key difference was that it had been cleverly altered. The necklace had been shortened from its original dramatic length into a more modern, wearable piece. This transformation gave it new life and proved that these historic jewels can be adapted for contemporary use. This raises an interesting question about the pearl sautoir. Could it receive a similar treatment? With the right adjustments, it could potentially become a stunning addition to the modern royal jewelry rotation. But for now, it remains in the vault, a beautiful reminder of 1920s elegance frozen in time. Queen Mary, who was arguably the greatest jewelry collector in royal history, created and commissioned numerous pieces that have also disappeared from regular use. In 1901, shortly after becoming Princess of Wales, she had Gerard create an extraordinary choker necklace that she called the Love Trophy Collar. The name alone gives you a sense of its romantic, elaborate design. Made in the grand Louis XVI style, it features panels decorated with what were known as amatory trophies. These are decorative motifs showing Cupid's bow and arrows crossed with a burning torch, all crafted in diamonds and suspended from diamond ribbons. Queen Mary used heirloom diamonds from her grandmother and aunt to create this deeply personal piece, and she wore it proudly in several portraits from the early 1900s. But even for someone as devoted to jewelry as Queen Mary, the collar's time in the spotlight was brief. Fashion was changing rapidly during this period, and the elaborate Edwardian style was giving way to simpler, more streamlined designs. At some point, she passed the necklace to her daughter-in-law, the future Queen Mother, but there's no evidence that it was ever worn again. Queen Elizabeth II inherited it in 2002, and it has remained unworn throughout her reign and beyond. There is good news for those interested in seeing this remarkable piece. It recently appeared as one of the highlights of the Edwardians' Age of Elegance exhibition at the King's Gallery in Buckingham Palace. For the first time in over a century, visitors could see it in full color rather than just in old black and white photographs. The exhibition has brought several of these hidden treasures temporarily back into public view. Another piece with a compelling personal history is the Teck Crescent Tiara. This piece traces back to Queen Mary's mother, Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, who was a granddaughter of King George III. She was known for her large personality and her genuine love of jewelry. She created this tiara using diamonds that her aunt had left to her, designing something quite unique. The tiara features diamond wild roses, nestled between 20 diamond crescents, creating an almost Gothic aesthetic that stands out from typical royal tiaras. After Princess Mary Adelaide died, the tiara passed through the Teck family line to Queen Mary, who eventually gave it to her daughter-in-law Elizabeth, shortly after King George VI came to the throne in 1936. The new Queen Elizabeth, later known as the Queen Mother, took the tiara with her on the famous 1939 Royal Tour of Canada. She wore it at evening events in Quebec, and it was photographed and documented. But after that tour ended, the tiara was put away and hasn't been seen in public since. It currently sits on long-term loan to Queen Camilla, but so far she hasn't chosen to wear it. The design, which blends Victorian sentiment with Georgian symmetry, simply hasn't found its moment in the 21st century yet. Some jewels have stories so dramatic that they read like adventure novels. The Grand Duchess Vladimir Diamond Riviere has one such history. The story begins in Imperial Russia, where Grand Duchess Vladimir was a prominent figure in St. Petersburg high society. She owned a magnificent necklace made of enormous diamonds arranged in a Riviere style, where each stone flows into the next. When the Russian Revolution erupted, the Grand Duchess managed to escape, but she had to leave her jewel collection behind. The jewels were hidden in a secret vault in the Vladimir Palace. In an incredibly daring mission, a friend of the family went back to the palace and smuggled the jewels out in 2 ordinary Gladstone bags, the kind of luggage anyone might carry. The jewels were then transported to the Grand Duchess in exile. After her death, her children inherited the collection, and her daughter eventually sold several pieces to Queen Mary, including that spectacular diamond Riviere. Queen Mary immediately saw potential in the necklace. In 1928, she commissioned Gerard to completely reset the diamonds into an extraordinarily long and versatile sautoir. The new design was a triumph of jewelry engineering. It could be worn at full length as a dramatic statement piece, or it could be divided into 2 shorter necklaces, or even converted into a pair of bracelets. Queen Mary wore it frequently during the 1930s, and it must have been absolutely stunning. A cascade of brilliant diamonds with a story of revolution and survival behind it. When Queen Mary died in 1953, her granddaughter Queen Elizabeth II inherited the necklace. This is where the public life of this extraordinary jewel comes to an unexpected halt. The late queen had very practical tastes when it came to jewelry. She famously disliked very long necklaces, once commenting with characteristic humor that they tend to get in the soup during formal dinners. Because of this personal preference, a necklace that survived a revolution and crossed continents has spent the last 70 years resting quietly in the vault. Its dramatic history is now more eventful than its recent existence. Queen Mary also created grand jewels from scratch, often by combining elements from different gifts she had received. In 1920, she decided to make a magnificent diamond stomacher, which is a formal ornament worn on the bodice of a gown. To create this piece, she used diamonds from 2 of her wedding gifts from 1893. One was a crescent brooch from the town of Swansea, and the other was a stomacher from the Maharaja of Kapurthala. The result was a splendid creation. Though by the time it was finished in the 1920s, stomachers were already becoming somewhat old-fashioned. In 1947, Queen Mary gave this enormous jewel as a wedding present to her granddaughter, Princess Elizabeth. In her early years as queen, Elizabeth found a clever way to wear it. Rather than using the full stomacher, which would have been quite overwhelming, she often detached the bottom section and wore it as a large, impressive brooch. This allowed her to honor her grandmother's gift while adapting it to modern tastes. For many years, this is how the public saw it, in separate pieces, rather than as the complete ornament. Then came 2002, the year of the Golden Jubilee. For a formal dinner at Windsor Castle, Queen Elizabeth wore the stomacher in its full, complete form for the first and only time in public. It felt like a deliberate choice, a beautiful acknowledgement of her heritage and the length of her own reign. The stomacher is now also on display at the Edwardians exhibition, giving the public a rare opportunity to see this remarkable piece of craftsmanship up close. Queen Mary created another stomacher that was even more politically significant than her diamond one. The Delhi Durbar stomacher was made specifically for the imperial ceremony of 1911, when King George V and Queen Mary were proclaimed Emperor and Empress of India in Delhi. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a statement about empire and power, designed for one of the most important ceremonial occasions in British imperial history. The stomacher is essentially an entire suite of jewels worn together as a single piece. It features a magnificent trellis of diamonds as its base, but what makes it truly extraordinary are the other significant jewels incorporated into its design. At the center sits the Cullinan 5, the famous heart-shaped diamond cut from the largest gem-quality diamond ever found. Below that, another portion of the Cullinan diamond. The eighth piece is set within a frame of Cambridge emeralds. The combination creates an overwhelming display of wealth and imperial authority. This stomacher was so specific to its historical moment that it has never been worn in its complete form since that ceremony in 1911. The individual pieces can be separated, and various brooches from it have been worn independently over the years. But the full stomacher remains a relic of an imperial age that no longer exists. It's too laden with the symbolism of empire to fit comfortably into the modern monarchy. The idea of jewels being assembled, taken apart, and reassembled in new forms leads to one of the more intriguing mysteries in the royal collection. Queen Mary inherited a beautiful pearl and diamond stomacher through her mother's family line. This piece had considerable history behind it. It originally belonged to Princess Mary, Duchess of Gloucester, who was a daughter of King George III. She left it to her niece, who was Queen Mary's mother, and eventually it came down to Queen Mary herself. Photographs show Queen Mary wearing the stomacher, which featured 15 large pear-shaped pearls arranged among diamonds in a cascading design. It was elegant and substantial, exactly the kind of historic piece that Queen Mary loved. But then something happened to it. Unlike the Delhi Durbar stomacher, whose component parts are all well documented and accounted for, this older stomacher seems to have vanished from the inventories as a complete piece after Queen Mary's time. Jewelry historians have developed a fascinating theory about what might have happened to it. They believe that when Queen Mary commissioned the famous lover's knot tiara from Gerard in 1913, she may have taken the distinctive pear-shaped pearls from this stomacher and used them in the new tiara, the lover's knot. Tiara, which became one of Princess Diana's signature pieces and is now regularly worn by Catherine, Princess of Wales, features swinging pear-shaped pearls that give it its characteristic movement and romantic appearance. If the theory is correct, those pearls once hung from a Georgian stomacher worn by a daughter of King George III. The question remains whether the original stomacher still exists somewhere in the vaults as a complete piece, or whether it was entirely dismantled to create new jewels. It's one of those historical puzzles that may never be fully solved. Moving to a different part of the collection, the Greville bequest brought numerous important jewels into royal hands in 1942. Margaret Greville, a society hostess and friend of Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, left her entire jewelry collection to the Queen Mother in her will. This bequest included several tiaras and necklaces that have become fixtures in the modern royal collection. However, one significant piece from this inheritance has barely been seen at all. The Greville diamond bow brooch is enormous, far larger than most brooches in regular use today. It was created by the French jewelry house Boucheron in 1900, and they made it by taking apart an even older tiara and reforming the diamonds into this lively, three-dimensional bow design. The Queen Mother did wear this showstopper occasionally, but very sparingly. After Queen Elizabeth II inherited it in 2002, she was never photographed wearing it at all. We know the brooch still exists because it was photographed for the Royal Collection Catalogue in 2012, but at that point, it had already been sitting unworn for over 60 years. The reason for its absence is probably quite practical. While bow designs are classic and timeless in jewelry, the sheer size and weight of this particular piece make it difficult to wear. Modern fabrics and clothing styles don't always accommodate such a large, heavy brooch, which needs substantial support to stay in place. Still, given that Queen Camilla has shown a willingness to wear bold statement jewels, there's always a possibility that she might decide to give this magnificent bow its moment in contemporary royal life. The Kent Amethyst Demi-Parure tells an interesting story about selective use within a matched set. This collection includes a necklace, earrings, 3 brooches, and hair combs, all featuring large amethysts in both faceted and smooth cabochon cuts. The set originally belonged to the Duchess of Kent, who was Queen Victoria's mother. She wore the pieces during her lifetime, including the full parure to her granddaughter's wedding in 1858. When the Duchess died, Queen Victoria inherited the set and officially designated it as an heirloom of the crown, meaning it should pass from queen to queen rather than being treated as personal property. Queen Alexandra found creative ways to use parts of the necklace, incorporating elements into her dress for the state opening of Parliament in 1902. The Queen Mother occasionally wore the brooch with its 3 pendant drops during World War II, as amethyst was traditionally associated with mourning. When Elizabeth II inherited the complete parure in 1952, she wore the full necklace and earrings exactly twice. The most notable occasion was during a state visit to Portugal in 1985. The brooch with 3 pendants appeared only rarely, including once during a state visit to America in 1991. However, the main brooch without its pendants became one of her most frequently worn pieces. She regularly chose it to complement purple outfits throughout her entire reign. The interesting pattern here is that one part of the set saw constant use while the rest remained largely forgotten. The necklace in particular has a beautiful and unusual design that deserves more attention. It's easy to imagine Catherine, Princess of Wales, wearing the complete set today with the historic necklace, matching earrings, and the magnificent brooch in its full form, with all 3 pendants attached. It would create a striking and cohesive look that would honor the history of the piece. The Persian turquoise parure represents another complete set that has essentially disappeared from view. Around 1923, Queen Mary acquired this matching collection from Gerard. It included a tiara, necklace, brooch, and earrings, all featuring vivid Persian turquoises set among diamonds. She immediately gave the entire set as a wedding gift to her new daughter-in-law, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. In her early years as Duchess of York, the future Queen Mother was photographed wearing pieces from the parure. The cool blue-green color was youthful and fashionable for the time. However, when her husband unexpectedly became king in 1936 following the abdication crisis, her role and her jewelry choices both changed. As queen consort, she gravitated toward more formal pieces centered on diamonds and the traditional colored gemstones like rubies, emeralds, and sapphires that were considered more appropriate for a queen. The turquoise parure quietly retired from public appearances. The set found new life in 1951 when Queen Elizabeth gave the complete, intact parure to Princess Margaret for her 21st birthday. On the young princess, the turquoises looked fresh and modern. The striking color contrasted beautifully with her dark hair. And for a period, the tiara was the most substantial piece in her personal collection, after the famous Poltimore tiara that she later purchased herself. Margaret wore the parure regularly through the 1950s and 1960s, but as Princess Margaret's own jewelry collection expanded over time, the turquoises appeared less and less frequently. When she died in 2002, much of her personal jewelry was sold at auction to pay inheritance taxes. Notably, the turquoise tiara was not included in that sale. Most sources suggest it either remains with her son, the Earl of Snowdon, or has been returned to the main royal vault. Either way, it hasn't been seen publicly in decades. Queen Alexandra's Edwardian choker has an even quieter history. Alexandra, who was famous for her slim figure and her love of wearing multiple necklaces layered together, acquired this choker during the first decade of the 20th century. It's a delicate piece featuring diamond swags and circles with a single drop at the center, all mounted on a soft velvet band. There's a lightness to the design that feels very much of its era. Alexandra wore it for various public occasions before World War I, including at regattas and in society portraits, but it was never one of her signature pieces. After her death in 1925, the choker essentially vanished. It re-emerged briefly in the early 1970s, when Princess Anne wore it twice, most memorably when she presented awards at the Film and Television Arts Ceremony at the Royal Albert Hall. That appearance brought the piece momentarily into the modern era, but since then it has returned to private storage. No other royal has chosen to wear it, though its Art Nouveau delicacy would actually photograph quite well with contemporary fashion. Some pieces carry such profound historical and spiritual significance that they transcend ordinary jewelry. Queen Alexandra's Dagmar necklace is one such piece. When Princess Alexandra of Denmark prepared to marry the future King Edward VII in 1863, her kinsman, King Frederick VII of Denmark, commissioned this extraordinary wedding gift. The centerpiece is a replica of a Byzantine-style cross that, according to medieval legend, was discovered in the grave of Queen Dagmar, a beloved Danish queen from the Middle Ages. King Frederick took this replica and placed inside it relics of immense religious importance. One was said to be a splinter of wood from the true cross on which Christ was crucified. The other was a piece of silk from the grave of King Canute, one of the great medieval kings who ruled both Denmark and England. The necklace itself, which surrounds this cross, is an elaborate creation featuring pearls and thousands of diamonds. Queen Alexandra treasured this necklace deeply. She wore the complete piece for her coronation, and she felt so strongly about preserving its integrity that when she made her will, she included a specific condition. She bequeathed it to the crown with the requirement that no part of it should ever be altered or taken apart. This instruction has been respected. Decades later, Queen Elizabeth II did wear the necklace on a few rare occasions, but interestingly, she always wore it without the cross pendant. This choice has created an ongoing question about the reasoning behind it. Was the cross considered too sacred an object to wear to state dinners and public events? Or was removing it a way to honor the secular beauty of the diamond and pearl necklace while keeping the religious relics separate? The decision may have been made out of respect for both the sanctity of the relics and the multicultural nature of modern state occasions. Whatever the reason, it remains one of those quietly fascinating choices that speaks to the complexity of wearing jewelry with such deep meaning. The necklace is currently on display at the Edwardians exhibition, giving people a chance to see both its beauty and its historical significance up close. It stands as a reminder that some royal jewels are more than decorative objects. They are connections to faith, history, and the complex web of European royal families.